I'm using, es que casi no hablo español y ya no me recuerdo el idioma, pero so prefiero hablar en inglés porque, I'm much more fluent in English. So you have to, I apologize for it. All of my friends, this is what's interesting about growing up in an Orthodox Jewish community in contrast to the summers I spent in Barrio Viejo and in Spanish, quote-unquote, Spanish Harlem. And when I was visit Spanish Harlem, there wasn't much art that I did because my cousins all belonged to these gangs, and so they would always drag me along in their adventures, which meant always running after somebody, throwing bottles at them, wanting to beat the crap out of them, or going into the basement with sort of 22s or something and killing rats, some kind of, or going to the park and trying to kill squirrels. I mean, this is always this idea of somehow trying to beat the crap out of somebody or to kill something. And so, meanwhile, in contrast, in the Orthodox Jewish community, everything was very peaceful, and everyone was ambitious. They wanted to be teachers and dentists and doctors and so on, even though it was essentially recent migrations, let's say, with the pogroms, from Russia and so on, and other parts of Eastern Europe where there's a lot of anti-Semitism. And so there was a real contrast between growing up in an Orthodox Jewish community, and also at the time I was an altar boy serving at the Catholic Church and the High Episcopal Church. And also I was the Shabbat Goy, which meant on holidays I would take care of things that the Orthodox Jewish families weren't allowed to take care of. But as a Christian, I could sort of take those sins onto myself. And for me, this was like a service that I was involved in. And what's interesting about it is that growing up in the Orthodox Jewish community, I was never tainted with anti-Semitism. It was like these were all of my close friends and shared a lot of, dreams about when we grew up kind of thing. Even though I was the Christian, but I became, because of Shabbat Goy, I was sort of part of an extension of the cultural reality. And then in the Latino community, with my cousins, that wasn't the case. There was like, why are you interested in going, if I spoke about wanting to be a teacher, why do you want to be a teacher? Why do you waste your time? They were all dropping out of school, and they couldn't understand why I was interested in reading books and stuff like that. But that all came out of my acculturation, interestingly enough, within the Orthodox Jewish community, versus whatever acculturation took place in the Puerto Rican community with my cousins. That I found to be an interesting, as later on when I was examining, like I'm sort of talking now, and in a sense spontaneously, but examining my history as a person, how I arrived at who I am now. And why is it that in my family I am so different? And my sister went on and she did her master's work also. She didn't, my mother didn't send her to Spanish Harlem for, a month during the summers. So she didn't have that experience, that I had to see that contrast. But for me, I had the opportunity to experience that contrast and in retrospect understand the importance of the whole role of acculturation within class and how important it is to really pay attention to how that forms expectations and, in a sense, what finally happens in your life. And few of us are able to escape the underclass framework and acculturation out of loyalty to it. We don't acquire the fluency and the love of learning and knowing and the sense of empowerment within that. We don't get that sense within the underclass acculturation. We do as we move out of that into class acculturation that is aspires more to knowing and to learning and to acquiring some sort of professional ability that you can then, share and participate and make perhaps a contribution within the society and the culture. There's for me, that's a critical thing. As critical as my uncle giving me that paper and pencil and saying, here, you can be empowered also. you can have grown-ups that still for you too, kind of thing. And so there was always this idea of acquiring a certain skill and knowledge that would move me on to some kind of sense of empowerment within my place within the social, context of the people around me, the society, the culture, and so on. So as an artist, this became important.
Rafael Montanez Ortiz. Of Puerto Rican, Portuguese, and Native American heritage, Ortiz has been a figure on the avant-garde scene since the late 1950s, when he made his first experimental films, edited with a tomahawk.
I got myself a made film, Hollywood-made film. It was a cavalry and Indian battle. I wanted to release the spirits that were driving the cavalry to hurt these indigenous people. And took the film and got a tomahawk and chopped it all up and did a chant, a war chant, and a spiritual releasing chant. Hey, hey, hey. Put them in a medicine bag, shook it up, put it all together randomly.
Lately, he's been making huge computer-generated panels. Ortiz makes art that brings visual impact to the world of ideas.
How can art move beyond the notion of the pre-literate, of just the image? Well, the art that's relevant to the present, to our potential and cognition, is an art that has text and image integrated, the two together. To what extent do we understand the architecture we are? As an artist, I am serious about being intelligent in my work. I don't want to be a savant. And not that I have anything against savants. Savants do amazing things. But if we have the potential, the God-given potential, to cognitively accomplish more, then we should.
First of all, you have to remember I'm the founder of El Museo del Barrio and its first director, which is a museum that was dedicated to the Latino culture, dedicated to the Puerto Rican culture. So when you talk about identity, my identity is larger than the notion of my mother being Puerto Rican, my biological father being Portugal, my stepfather being Puerto Rican. It's larger than that. I'm not stuck there. I'm not hostage to it. I saw myself as an American, okay? And that whatever else was going on, I am an American. Okay, I don't make my art to be a Latino artist. I make my art to be an American artist. These other things are accidental. Okay, now however much you want to talk about destiny, right, within the notion of accident, it's important to understand, right, for me to sort of make it understood that I don't reject my gene pool roots. I don't reject the idea that my mother was born in Puerto Rico and that her father was born in Mexico and that, my grandmother was born in Spain and that on my father's side he was born in Portugal and that my stepfather's side is born in Ponce. I don't reject that whole history and that my Portuguese father's father was born in the Basque country and that his family came from France and so on. I don't reject that history. But if we examine that history, we examine a history of people that have migrated from all places on the planet. Okay? People, we didn't suddenly, my stepfather didn't out of some vacuum appear in Ponce, in Puerto Rico. Right? He has a history of family too that traveled from other places on the planet, whether it's from Brazil through the Orinoco, and you want to talk about the Arawak and the Taíno, if you want to start at the beginning, or the Spanish invaders that came, and the encomienda system and the concubinage and all of the blends and so on of gene pooling that led to all of us Latinos and the African, and enslavements that then became part of the gene pool structure that we are. Right? So I don't. If you seriously want to examine your sense of identity, it's got to extend far beyond some piece of land somewhere. First, I have the concept. Right? I saw the Statue of Liberty is central to the concept, and I did research on images of the Statue of Liberty, looked through hundreds of images until I found the image that would serve, my concept. And so that's one of the first things. And then I wanted her to be standing on something that wasn't quite that solid, because that's the whole issue of the undermining of what, in fact, she represents, and that the foundation she's on, that stand, should be more porous. So I found a sort of impressionist painting of the Statue of Liberty. And so I found this photo image, and I found the painting, and I found the painting image with its impressionism was not quite as solid. Right? You know how impressionism sort of softens things. So I used this sort of hard, to get this solid copper kind of sense and the weight, and I put it on this sort of painted part of. I just separated that statue and placed this one on it, and then I found the flags of the two countries. I don't know whether it's Tennessee and Arizona, but this is the Arizona flag on the side and the Arizona flag here. And so I got these two state flags, which were the center of the controversy in terms of law, that I saw as somewhat extreme and radical around issues of immigration. So I have their flags there. In a sense, it's been occupied. In other words, the Statue of Liberty, which represented "Give me your tired, your poor, and your huddled masses," was now occupied by a sense of governance in America that would contradict all of that. That was the whole basis of the delivering of the statue from France to us. I then did some of my own poetic coming to terms with that, and where I said, the statue that once with arm held high lit the way to liberty no longer signals the way. The whirlwinds of politics, like a Frankenstein, now possesses her. With lowered arm and extinguished torch, she wields the teabag symbol of the tempest that, like the evil genie beckoned from the teapot, now drowns out the voice of liberty, a liberty whose golden voice once shouted. And then I state, that "Give me your tired, your poor, and your huddled masses." And then below that, I say, driven by phobic winds, the crowds of frightened and hateful ventriloquist voices now speak for her, shouting, "Punish the illegal immigrants, deport them, punish their families, punish their children, punish their employers, make it so hateful for them they will not want to come to this land of the brave and home."